or how insecure they are until I actually call their bluff, basically. All right. So I'm just letting you know you got to call their bluff to know which one it is oftentimes. All right, moving on. Rambo, my dog, Rambo, is a huge example of that whole protect me thing, and the the sin of it, as you will, of actually touching and petting and sleeping with and all that stuff, or letting him touch you, and how that makes them fall apart. So when that happens, you're really going backwards in terms of trying to make your dog feel better. It is natural for them to go for protection, but you should be removing them off of your person, like pushing them off and saying off and good and all that before you carry on. Just take it as information, but don't let it slide. Don't let them keep leaning on you, because you're just going to make them really messed up. All right. A third thing that she brings up, Jane Williams, is the love me thing. Sometimes they're actually looking for affection, and it's hard to tell. They may act calm. It may be because they're dominating you. They may be acting calm because they actually feel calm and relaxed around you. So it could be something that you are there that's very innocent, but once again, like the protect me mode thing, if you have your dog just lean up on you and get affection from you whenever they want, now the whole pack leadership thing screwed up. Oopsie, that was my phone. See? we're both that one for one, and then I also cussed, so I think I'm down by 2. So anyway, that's because it's 2 points for that, like an extra shot. All right, so the deal is that you want to make sure that you're not accidentally causing your dog to get all uppity because you gave them free affection, or let them take the affection, like what I call grab ass issue, like someone just walking up and grabbing you, and if you don't do anything about it, you're condoning the situation. Well, the same thing happens with the dog, and eventually their psychology sort of flips. Their concept of like what the hierarchy is about flips out. So that's also not a good situation to allow the dog to continue just come up and rub up against you. So you actually have to teach your dog to ask for affection by giving you personal space first, then acknowledging the work done. For instance, just a sit stay that they offered. Oh, good stay. Good job. You're looking at me. Good job. Okay, come over here. I'm going to pet your head. All right? So you actually have to do it that way, as opposed to allowing them to pet you and then you just follow through and follow their lead and go ahead and pet them because they rubbed up against you. So one of the things is like, a previous dog of mine, Kazi, from which Kazi Dog Train is named, she was really good. She used to be a very whorish dog, would throw herself at everybody, urinate on every situation, overexcited, especially with men. And so it took me a long time to teach her to actually settle down and learn to just stop and sit and about a foot away from anyone she wanted to have contact with and wait for them. And she would just look them in the eye and wait for them. And I had the experience of being in a large group of people with a bunch of dogs loose in a large room, and it was a social event. And so Kazi was eyeing this one dark, tall, handsome dude with a motorcycle jacket, and she kept looking at him and then looking at me and looking at him and looking at me. And finally, when I was done with my conversation with someone, I said, okay, you can go visit. And then I didn't think about it. I just went and talked to somebody else because I trusted Kazi that much. She was that well trained. And so all of a sudden I heard this scream, and it was the man in the motorcycle jacket up against the wall, clawing it as she stood there a foot away from him, looking at him intently. And he's like, what is she doing? What is she doing? I said, oh, she just wants to be pet, and if you don't pet her after a certain amount of time, she'll just walk away. And sure enough, Kazi just walked away and ignored him, and he like slid down off the wall. I was like, oh, probably feeling very foolish. But the thing is that I can't really blame the guy because nobody trains their dog to do that anymore. So that used to be the standard many, many, many years ago, especially in Europe. But you don't let your dog just go up and nuzzle everybody and get what they want right away, just like you wouldn't let them just go behind a counter and steal a burger. Well, maybe you would, which is a problem. So if you would, that's a Shubs move right there. I'm going to spank you over the line right there. So, that's what we want to do, is teach our dogs to actually ask for affection politely, just like you wouldn't just go up and start grabbing people all the time. And if you do that, you should be locked up. Okay? So the thing is that we need to teach our dogs to do that no matter why your dog or a dog rubs up against you on their own accord, whether it's because they think they're the boss, whether they think that they want to be protected, or whether they want affection, it should not happen. You should not allow it to happen because it causes problems. So you need to correct the situation and let them know where your boundaries are. And everybody's different. Your boundaries are different. Those dogs are boundaries. They're different too. And that's what you need to start doing, is altering your behavior. Now, Jane Williams goes on to talk about how to alter the behavior. And I'll read it to you and I'll kind of go through with what I disagree with her on. So I want you to catch these things when you're reading these blogs and sort of like put yourself in the scenario. First of all, I don't know if she's actually, I didn't look up if she's actually a trainer or not. I think she's a writer. I think she's just a person who just knows a lot of, does her research. So what her answer to how to alter this behavior, how to change it, is very, in many cases coming up here, is kind of vague. So I'm going to bring this out. So here's what she says. She says, depending on the situation surrounding this behavior. Once again, we can't always read exactly what they're thinking until we add another part of into the equation, into the situation, and then get a reaction. But depending on the situation surrounding, she says, you may not have much of a problem with your dog's leaning tendencies. I'm going to tell you right now, you better have a problem with your dog's leaning and rubbing tendencies, okay? The volunteer that worked at this humane society, at this shelter, didn't know not to do that. And so when there was a startling situation, the dog didn't trust that person to actually protect them. She was taking control. She was a very smart dog. And because I interacted with her through the kennel, anyway, it's a long story. But I have enough, knowledge and experience to know that she knows what she's doing. And when that person was being tested by her as to see who was in charge, as soon as she got startled by an outside noise, she flipped out and responded in a fear reaction, a fear nip. So, they were like, they saw it as affection only. And then it turned on them. And that's not exactly what happened at all. That's where, volunteers oftentimes are people who, aren't well educated. They get into trouble. And then they try to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. So anyway, but that's a personal PO situation for me. But all right, so now she goes on to say, going back to Jane Williams, but if he's a large dog, the dog that you're talking about, or is against you all the time, you may want to discourage this behavior. I don't care if it's a large dog or a small dog. Nothing. Don't do it. Okay. The most basic way to discourage his leaning is to take control of the situation. Highly vague. How do you take control of the situation? Then she suggests, ignore him completely when he wants attention. Do not give in when he seeks affection. Well, if the dog is already touching you, it's got the affection. If I walked into a bar and a guy already grabbed my butt, he already got what he wanted, at least in the beginning. So if I do nothing about it, he's just going to be attached to my butt and then attached to another part of my body and he's going to just go for more. The dog's going to, you can't just ignore that stuff. You got to actually push the guys off, right? So the deal is, actually it's a true story, but anyway, the deal is that you want to make sure that you actually react firmly, but very clear. That was me snapping. That was me. Oh. All of a sudden the engineer's like, yes, I'm sitting. I'm sorry. So you want to react firmly and say off good as soon as the dog's in the right spot. Of course, you always reward as soon as they're in the right spot, even though you made it happen. So, when it comes to that kind of situation, if you keep going back and back, and you've corrected the dog twice, the third time I take the dog out of the room, I take the dog into the crate, and no anger, no nothing, just done, game over. Okay, so you gotta assert yourself in a confident manner to assume the role of leader. That part she said, that is correct. Okay, redirect his attention when he's lean happy, such as telling him to fetch a toy or go to his bed. I'm gonna say the bed part's okay. Fetching the toy, not so much, because now the dog's going to learn, especially if it likes to play with toys, that every time he leans on you or she leans on you, then you're going to play with them. You just reinforce that behavior. So don't do the toy thing. Ignore that. It's crap. Okay, to the bed or to the crate, and you can play with him, give him affection, but on your terms, not when he demands and presses with you, which just contradicted what she said about going to send him a dog play fetch with the toy, but there you have it. So, yeah, this is kind of a serious thing. This is something I'm amazed that so many dog handlers don't know, who are supposed to be experienced. If you're a dog owner and you're still learning, I get that. But if you're supposed to be professional, that's kind of a shoves move. So All right. Um, there was one other blogger who came up with something kind of important. I thought it was a good idea. I thought it was a something I didn't think about, but I have experienced it. So I got it from the article's called "Context is Key When Dogs Rubs Head Against a Person." It's from sfgate.com, the San Francisco Gate, and it was written by. And I'm looking for the author. It was published on. Tuesday, September 17th, 2013. So it was a couple years. Oh, it was Dawn Covell, Kovell. At the time, she was director of behavior and training at the Marin Humane Society up there near San Francisco. So she was saying that one thing out of the besides the three that we mentioned, she mentioned that the dog might actually be really itchy, and it sounds kind of silly, but sometimes when dogs have food allergies or environmental allergies, they tend to rub on people a lot because people allow it to happen. So it's kind of like you're a walking sort of, scratch post. So that is, I've seen that happen. And then I've seen dogs who had allergies for long and it became an obsessive compulsive behavior even after the allergies were gone. Because of course there was all those other things I talked about, the who's the boss, protecting thing, and the love thing. Okay, so all of those things kind of came into play, and now the dog learned to just do that to get attention, even though the allergy situation was gone. So watch out for that too. That is a possibility, especially if you just adopted a dog, and so you're still learning about the ins and outs of this particular dog that you adopted. It's possible that that is why the dog's doing it all the time, especially if you see a lot of salivation and stuff. But I've also seen that happen with dogs who are extremely dominant. So, you got to test the waters a little bit. You can't really predict just by the basis of there's that behavior. You need to kind of throw something into the context and see what the reaction is by the dog. So, yeah, I'm highly disappointed that these people over at the Humane Society didn't know that the dog was not giving them affection. The dog was actually finding out who was boss and deciding that she was, which really freaked her out when another weird noise happened and she turned around and nipped right away. Personal, it was just her fear reaction as a husky, and she knew she couldn't trust that person because they're a pushover. So, all right, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to talk about this week. So, as I say every week, and I try to make it clear because dyslexia sometimes kicks me in the butt, but and I say every week, in the dog world, to love is to serve. So, give your dog little ways every day to serve you, and in return, you will have served them well. See, I told you. I just do weird things like that. In return, you will have served them well. We're not editing that. We're going to go with that because that's who I really is. Okay? I'll talk to you next week. Possibly clearly. I don't know. We'll try.